Thank you, panelists. Now, this is a really, it's a topic that is not discussed enough, in my opinion, because primary education is basically laying the foundation for every learning that you're gonna go through for the next, you know, we have continuous learning, so the rest of your life essentially. And this is the basic area where your core skills are developed. And it's also an area that is seeing a lot of development, a lot of evolution, and there's a lot more focus on this. And I think after the pandemic, with a lot of children being forced to stay at home and learn online, this has definitely become a topic of major discussion and also an area of major transformation. So to start this discussion off, I would like to start with my panelists here, Dr. Chaturvedi. Can we hear from you? You know, is there a change in paradigm in primary education? What is that change and what is happening?
I think the change has to come in. It has to come in faster than we want. The fact is that much as we want, outcome-based, output or outcome-based, effects in the higher education, the point is it needs to start at the lower level. And with kindergarten, I see a lot of innovation going on right up to the age of 6. But when it comes to primary school education, where, it's really the concepts are, being driven, that's where I'm very optimistic that the NEP coming in and the mission for, foundational literacy and numeracy, that is going to make a big difference. And, the fundamentals of language and numeracy, once they're in place by grade 3, that's when we're going to see, improving results and outcomes at every level, not just the private schools in metros, but, schools at every level once they come into middle school and high school. And I think the pandemic has built the urgency on that. There are tremendous learning lags happening today. Children are, I was speaking to the headmistress of, my daughter's school, and she said, where earlier 5 kids out of 30 were lagging, today 25 kids are lagging. So concepts are not sound right now, and there is an urgent need to, get into the rigorous concept building phase in the primary school years.
No, absolutely. There's definitely a lot of work that needs to be done in this area. And while that work is sort of coming in, the most important thing does become having the right teachers and therefore the right teacher training. And of course, we have a lot more stakeholders in this area of education. You have your parents also involved. There's a lot of people who are involved in this state. And it can be difficult to kind of juggle and manage all of that. Mr. Yadav, can I come to you now? How do we shape the paradigm of primary education in your own words?
Good afternoon, everyone. I think one big challenge that has come up is because kids have developed an ability to not attend for a long period of time, which during pandemic it exaggerated a lot more, I think. And we need to start bringing the basics back. As we said, the topic is paradigm change. I think it's not about paradigm change. I think getting the basics right is more important for us, because NEP, one thing which has very rightly did was focusing on numeracy and literacy. I think at primary level, these are the key focus areas which I think the schools must do and the parents must do. And I think the beauty of this period is that parents are very much involved, and the kids also listen to what the parents have to say. So what happens is that you are able to develop a strong base and foundation for the kids when they go to higher levels. And if you get the concepts right, because a lot of times we are trying to teach too many things to the students at this stage. If we try to just teach basic things which are required in a proper way, I think they are better prepared to handle it. As ma'am was saying, a lot of kids are falling behind. And the reason is, we can understand that it was online education for past 2 years. And this is one stage where kids look up to their teachers. They really idolate them and learn a lot from them. The kind of way the teachers behave, they interact, connect, that personal touch which is very important in primary sector. And if that is not being done, that learning is not happening. So that is why this fallback is coming. But I think a lot of improvements are coming. There is no doubt in that also. I think schools are working hard teacher training is happening. It is a huge challenge, of course, because it's a huge country. So that will always be there. The disparities will remain from one end of the spectrum to another. But despite all those challenges, people are much better off what they were earlier. So while we want to have a change, I would say trying not to do too many things, because when you try to do too many things, you may not get anything right. We need to focus on what NEP, as I said, foundation, literacy and numeracy. This is very, very core. Unnecessarily too many subjects, children not able to read properly, not able to write properly, because now one big challenge I think which we see among students is that they don't read enough. Earlier we had comics where children would still be reading and learning that art. But now what is happening is everything is available on this Cartoon Network or YouTube. So that reading skill, if it is not there, where do we expect to get that, the vocabulary to write? That is a big challenge with the kids. Creative writing is falling behind because of this only. So I think while we have to work a lot, there are many positives to take, but it will need consistent, planned, no knee-jerk reactions, because anything fanciful comes, a lot of schools want to implement to show that parents, we are ahead of the curve, we are implementing new NEP and all those things. Let's take things at a time, work on the basics. I think it will move in the better direction.
Absolutely, you are right. There are challenges and there is a lot of work being done. And I think there's a lot of also perspectives, right, like on how primary education should take place. There's a lot of ideas out there and maybe not a lot of room for experimentation of those ideas per se. But like, I would like to come to my final speaker, Ms. Gonsalves. We have heard a little bit about also the edtech space. And coming from there, can you tell me, like, in your opinion, what kind of transformation, what kind of paradigm shift would you like to see in the education space?
Good morning, first of all, to everyone out here. I would say the first thing is change is pertinent. Anybody who does not adopt becomes obsolete. So it is given that there has to be paradigm shift. There's no doubt about that. Even before we understand what is the paradigm shift or what does it look like, I think it is important to acknowledge some of the paradigm shifts that have already occurred around us. For all of you present here, I would want you to take a couple of minutes, go back to your first day at school. I don't know how many years ago that was, but I'm sure some of us cried. I'm sure some of us were very happy looking forward to it. Some of us didn't go. So there have been different experiences. The first paradigm shift that has happened, today the child is born digital native. He's born with a tab. I have a couple of nephews and nieces. I see them with a tab. It's so difficult to bring them out of that. I don't think we saw anything but trees and fruits when we were growing up. That's a very huge paradigm shift that educators have to deal with today. The second paradigm shift is the kind of families that we have today. Earlier, it used to be joint families. I myself have grown up with around 8-9 kids in the house of the same age. But then today, that child is alone. The parents are going to work. He sees nothing but walls, toys, and screens. This is the reality. So with these kind of shifts that have already occurred around us, it's already happened. There's no choice. It is important for educators also to adapt. Now, it's a big challenge. I think me and Yadavji were discussing earlier that this is the challenge that we face today as educators. How do you guide parents? How do you guide this child? How do you nurture them? How do you teach them life skills? This requires, as he rightly said, a very consistent, planned, and fundamental approach. And that is a massive challenge that is posed to the academicians or the primary school teachers and the founders today. This will definitely bring about new age founders like Yadavji himself, like Dr. Chaturvedi, who needs to ensure that we bring about this change, we bring about that guidance that is required, not just for teachers, not just for parents, but that child himself, herself. So to take them through those phases and ensure that they are made good, responsible human beings who are able to tackle most of these challenges that they'll grow up into. That's a different world that we are looking at. We may not have experienced it, but they are. And I think it is important and it's necessary to have a paradigm shift there.
Absolutely, and I think you also made a really great point there where you said that it's not just about making a paradigm shift, but also recognizing the shifts that have happened and sort of just adapting ourselves to that and finding a way to get through that and have more positive outcomes through that. So thank you so much. Dr. Chaturvedi, I would like to come back to you because you do kind of work in the parent space, and parents are a big stakeholder in primary education. I mean, in higher education, absolutely they have a say, but most of the time, higher educators are not focused on parents, they're more focused on students. But in this case, how involved are parents in primary education, and what kind of impact does that kind of have on your learning outcomes?
Thank you. I think parents play a very, very significant role during the early years. Right up to middle school, at least, parents have a huge role in hand-holding and support, in driving discipline, in driving rigor. And the attitude of parents towards education kind of, is mirrored in the child in the classroom. So I think parents have a huge role. I think the issue that we need to understand is what are we teaching our children and how are we preparing them, right? So today, we have doctors and scientists who were able to crack vaccines for COVID, which was completely unexpected when they were going to school 40 years ago, 50 years ago. So the fact is we are trying to prepare children today for problems that we are never going to be able to foresee. So I think the critical aspects of, problem solving, analytical thinking, critical reasoning, all of this, teachers, schools, and parents need to work in tandem and in partnership. Because it is not about finishing the content in the textbook and appearing for your, summative assessments and your comprehensive assessments. It's about how are we trying to get the child to begin thinking. And I think I'm happy to see some boards have started, drilling down into, the why and the why and the why of it. But somewhere, I think we all go back to how we studied in the 1980s or 70s or 90s, as it were. So I think parents, being informed parents helps, kind of research, how can you make the experience of coaching or teaching your child more experiential, more hands-on, more touch and feel, even at home, and not just about answering those questions, memorizing them, and going to, school the next day. So like she also mentioned today with working parents, the attention, on one hand, we talk about parents, hovering too much and being overprotective. On the other hand, there is also, while all this is going on, there's a lack of attention on the academics. So definitely, I think that will continue to be a concern, and it's something that parents need to realize, that these are the formative years of learning, and what you put in during the first 10 years, then automatically the child is able to take on by himself or herself.
Thank you, Dr. Chaturvedi. Ms. Yadav, I'd like to come to you. Now that you've sort of heard what Dr. Chaturvedi has had to say about parents' involvement, what is your take on this? And also, while we're talking about, kind of these core skills that need to be developed, in your opinion, what are the core skills that we need to focus on, at least from the school's perspective, and that can later be sort of practiced at home by the parents?
I completely agree with Dr. That the parents have a massive role. There is no doubt in that, in the development of the child, especially at the primary level. And scientifically also, if you think, the kids spend about 6 to 7 hours at school. After that, a lot of time is spent at home. And the kids always learn not by what is being told to them, but by observing what they see. So how the teacher behaves, how the teacher interacts, how the parents behave, they interact. All those things are what children learn and follow, and that is how they do. So I think all the kids I've seen also who have been doing well at primary level and going ahead also, it is the impact of parent which is very, very significantly seen. It doesn't matter whether you are a very educated parent or you may be just, your child is a first generation learner, but being present at primary stage, if I would say, just sitting with the child, ensuring that the child does his work regularly on a time, he spends the time which is required to understand those things. That has a massive impact. So, the role of parent can never be undermined. New age parenting is a big challenge that we have to accept. Bringing up kids was a challenge earlier, but with time, I think it is becoming even more challenging, because as parents, while we are more concerned about kids getting distracted with this digital devices, all those things, but let's first face it, as parents, we are also distracted. We spend a lot of time. The kids watch us playing with their phone or chatting or doing something else and then telling kids you don't do it. It never works. So as a school, I think it's first very important that connect with parents, work with them, and make them understand the impacts of the actions that they take. Almost always, parents want good for their children. There is no doubt in that. But a lot of times they are not aware what is good. That is a big challenge. If we are, as a school, we have to work with them, make them understand that which actions they must take, which they cannot take. A lot of times they appreciate unnecessarily, or maybe try to give too many things to the kids. This perception that as a child I had difficulties in getting these things, my child should get everything. मेरे बेटे को कोई कमी नहीं होनी चाहिए. But that creates a lot of other problems. People are not understanding the effort required to achieve certain things. The value of those things are getting lost. As I was discussing earlier also, that something or anything that we value in life, it comes after a lot of perseverance, after a lot of hard work. And if that is not being done, if it is easily made available, then you don't value it. So what happens is that if you're not used to that grind, you're not used to put that effort, you will never be able to achieve that thing. You're getting things done easily, quickly. So next time when you have to work hard for it, you try to put effort 1 day, 2 days, and after that you realize it is too hard, I cannot do it. So these are very important things. As a school perspective, I would say in primary level, what skills we want to teach? Very basic skills. To be able to sit in one place for half an hour without running here and there. That has become very important, especially after pandemic. Kids are having a tough time. To be able to read things. Because they're just not reading, which is really concerning. Another I see, especially in upscale society, a lot of times, parents take pride in teaching their kids English, which is great. But let's understand, English is a working language for us. Our children must also know their mother tongue. They know potato, but they don't know aloo. So it is, really sad. There can be no culture without language. So it's important that kids learn the basic language skills of the mother tongue also. A lot of times we keep pushing English, which is very important, there's no doubt in that. But this mother tongues also must be taken care. That is very important. So skills of listening to somebody. Listening also is a very important art which we have forgotten. A lot of times we just respond without even react rather than responding. School has to teach that. Ability to accept failure. In pre-primary level, what happens? Everybody is getting a certificate. This concept of participation certificate. So everybody has something to show at home. These are small kids, they understand fine. But in primary scale level, we should slowly stop this habit. Children must understand that person who is getting that has put a lot of hard work. And after that, he has got that. I must also learn to put that hard work that is required. If I don't, somebody else will get that reward. They should feel bad. And then they will learn to work hard. As parents or as schools, it is our responsibility to see that when they see something which is not, which they want to achieve, they have not been able to achieve, that bad feeling must be converted into a positive effort. If you are able to do that, then kids will strive for it. They will learn perseverance. They know that there's another one boy or girl who is studying hard and I am playing all the time, then it is wrong. So as schools, we want to develop these skills, the skills of, able to connect with each other. Because ma'am was saying earlier that there are a lot of single children at homes. It's a big challenge because now you're not used to how to speak with different people. This has to be learned. So once, as a school, we are able to focus, content is there, we have to do that, there is no doubt in that. But content is a very, very, I would say, not more than 50% of actual learning that happens in schools. If I try to correlate, all of you think of your college years. I don't think anybody remembers what was taught in the classrooms. Rather in the hostels and dormitories among your friends, in the cafes, that we learned much more things about which are valuable in life. It's the same thing in schools. And that is why online schools are not going to function. Because they can give content, they cannot develop these skills. As humans, we are hardwired to be social animals. if we live in society, we have to develop these skills.
Thank you, Mr. Yadav. I mean, you've given us a lot of food for thought over there. And you're right, there is quite a lot of skills that need to be developed within schools, and that cannot be done completely and wholly without the support of parents and those skills being taught also back at home. And also balancing, like you said, English can be taught in schools, mother tongue can be taught at home. It's a balancing act, and schools and parents definitely have to work together for that. Ms. Gonsalves, you know, you were mentioning earlier in the discussion about how you're seeing a lot more kids on tablets and on online, and there's no way to really escape the online. So can you tell us a little bit more, like, you know, what core skills can the online bring to us or can solidify for us?
Indeed. So firstly, well put, Yadavji has touched upon quite a lot of critical points. I would say it's very important before we think about the child's upskilling. It's important for us as teachers and parents to upskill ourselves, because we come from a different experience, and we come from an era where we have not been given everything. You rightly put that we want to ensure that our children get everything. That in itself as a habit builds a different paradigm for them. It makes them into different individuals. That being said, it is very important to teach them life skills. Life skills at a fundamental level of how to have fun without a digital instrument, because that's all they know. They know only the games on their phone. It's important for parents to spend time with them at home, playing outside the digital world. It's important to spend time having that touch, having that humane feeling when they're with them. Coming to your question, right, so how do I ensure that digital content, etc., is ensuring a good guidance or path for the digital native or generation alpha? It is given that they are going to be on their tabs. I have seen this firsthand. You cannot take that away from them. They have grown, they have born with it, they're going to grow with it. But what we can do, what we can control is that we give them the right content. There is a huge array of content today to choose from. I was looking at one of the videos the other day. It literally showed the child how to get an A in exam, and that was by cutting out a rubber and putting an A on the paper. And I was a bit taken aback. I said, how are we allowing children to watch this? Because it gives the wrong idea. But then this is the kind of content there is, and it's not the only. There is a huge array of content, right? So we as parents, teachers, educators have a big responsibility where we ensure the right content is given to them from their childhood. They're looking at the right set of things, even inside their phones, even inside the tab. Ensuring small settings of, that they are able to see only that content, restricting it around that. These are some of the things that we can control, we could look at. The second thing is to have a balanced schooling. Even in class, it's important to ensure it's okay to be digitally native. Rather than trying to take that, it's important to understand how to use the digital content, how to use the digital technology to our benefit. It's important to guide the students, guide the children around this. This is the second aspect where technology will play a very, very big role for them growing up. At the same time, balancing that with life skills, balancing that with something as simple as how to have fun, not just there, but outside as well. How to have fun with other kids, being social for that matter. How to deal with failure, how to deal with social other challenges that the child will grow up into. This also becomes very important to ensure that it's part of our curriculum, it's part of what we teach, what we do day in and day out at schools.
Thank you for also pointing that out. I think we have very much covered core skills, digital skills, parenting. There's obviously a lot more to discuss in this, but I would like to give the audience a chance to ask a question to our panelists since while they are here. Do we have any questions?
My name is Dr. J.K. Sharma. I'm from industry, and I'm also visiting an institute as a visiting faculty. My question is that the topic of this panel discussion is change in paradigm of primary education. Now, when we are talking about this education, we are talking with the perspective of urban education. The question to the panelists is that what the primary educators are thinking about the same in rural India. That is the question.
You're right. I mean, there has always, over the last 20 years, a difference between India and Bharat is trying to be bridged, but we are a long way from that. So, we were just talking about infrastructure, right? When you talk about educational infrastructure in the classrooms, does it mean your fancy air conditioning, better seats? Today, schools are looking more like hotels than schools. And is that the meaning of the infrastructure needed for good primary education? So when it comes to rural India, I think, a lot of, change will come in by the uniform implementation of the FLN standards. So a grade 3 child in Delhi should be, the same as a grade 3 child, at a panchayat level somewhere in rural UP, right? So for that, I think investment in teacher training is going to be very, very critical. Even in the previous panel, we discussed that, right? So it is not enough changing the curriculum, bringing in, better software for the classes, bringing in midday meal schemes, which are more nutritious. While all of that is great, I think teacher training is going to be very critical to ensuring the last mile delivery of the intended curriculum. So that is one thing that I feel. And the second thing is the correct usage of technology. So a large part of the budget is going in, in the cloud and delivery of the right software to, rural children. So the optimum use of technology, today with 4G, 5G coming in and mobile phones at the penetration level that we have in rural India, I think more effort to see how that last mile delivery through interactive content, she just spoke about what kind of content. So interactive digital content rather than, viewer-based or cartoon-based content is also going to be critical. So I think the key is in the execution of this entire space rather than the planning, because a country like ours where we have, more than 65, 70% in the smaller towns, execution is going to be very critical over the next 10 years.
I'm from the Defense Forces. I'm Major General SVP Singh. Now, how do I combine this field of education with this very august audience? Firstly, during the course of my service, I have been chairman of the Army Public Schools as well as the Kendra Vidyalayas at 3 different stations, counting 10+2 schools. I'm a son of an educationist. My wife is a teacher. So I synergize much of education within me. You all spoken about a paradigm shift among the children, the classroom environment and the home environment where the child sees the 4 walls and the screens and not the trees and the fruits. At the same time, you have said the paradigm shift for the parents, upskilling their own skills to meet the counter requirement of the children and not look back at your own time or your own generation. Now I'll share with you a very practical thing, because I've heard the previous sessions also. I'll give 2 examples for your consideration and how we can deal with it in the environment. Firstly, we have a domestic help staying in our home. The girl is studying in class 8. And, the 3 years they have been with us, I found good personality development in her. She's studying in one of the DLF schools. And I talk to her very often. My wife talks to her. Our daughter-in-law talks to her. And we talk to her in English. Because, that's the language of development, whatever we may say. But she doesn't have exposure to those platforms with the children of what this sessions has been addressing to. Somewhere rural and semi-rural has come up. But she doesn't have that exposure. So for her, the online teaching was a big challenge. And my daughter-in-law would attend to her. Yesterday only I asked her, how's your classes going along and how do you find getting back to school? And I was very alarmed and I had to take up this case. She told me there's a lot of abusing by naturally the boys, and abusing across whether it's the teacher or the students, different gender, different castes. So I feel, and I don't mind, I've named the organization where they're studying. I think this is something the faculties, the schools have to take care of and attend to it. I'll give you another counter and then I'll stop.
Sir, sorry,
There's
we're about to run out of time.
You see, I'm just giving a comparison. It's a very important thing. In our neighborhood, we got a child who just completed 2 years. He comes to me every evening. He runs in. So one day he picked up the remote and he went to the TV and said, Alexa, but the remote was of the fan. So he was angry why Alexa is not coming up. So these are the two ends in my environment. I've shared with you, parent, the child paradigm shifts. Now you may address any one of you.
If we could have a quick address, because we've actually run out of time for the
I'll
panel,
just-
and we can also continue this discussion afterwards.
I'm
But
sorry I
please,
took a
Mr.
little more time because
No,
I had
sir,
to
it's all right.
emphasize on issues.
I'll just
Sir.
quickly address this. I think the first case which you said, I think which is very right, it has increased, no doubt. And the reason is the quality of content that they're accessing. Because if you watch YouTube videos, suppose you search something and start looking at it, and there are suggestions which come up. You know, there's a proper research by MIT that after 4 different suggestions you select, there is no relation with what you started and what you end up with. And so that is a big challenge. And kids are getting exposed to things which at their age they should never be exposed. So they're learning things, and because they're not aware of the consequences, and they tend to use that. And especially this is happening more so in the middle school to secondary level. So I think as ma'am had earlier said also, control of quality is very important. The kind of amount of time they are spending on the digital devices, because we cannot take away that. So we have to do that. There is no doubt in that. And being alert, that is the only way, I think, and counseling, that is very important. When they learn to understand the consequences that online and offline are different worlds, and you can, a lot of things do in online, you cannot do in offline. So I think once we start putting across the message to everyone involved, things should improve. It will take time and it is a challenge. There is no doubt in that, because I see kids every day, and so this kind of cases come in where they don't know what they are speaking at this age. And I mean, I'm shocked. इस उम्र में ऐसा कैसे होने लगा है? But this is how things have been. They have been exposed to.
Thank you for your question, and thank you, Mr. Yadav, for your responses. I know there are far more questions by the audience. I'm sorry, but we have run out of time, but our panelists will be available if you would like to discuss this afterwards, outside, or over the lunch break when that takes place. Thank you so much, audience, for being this interested in this panel and, engaging with the panelists. We have only touched a very small portion of this topic. There's quite a lot to speak about. And I think one of the points that our panelists have made so well is that it is a learning journey, right, for everyone. And the changes that we are seeing are not changes that have happened before. It's all new. And we just have to sort of take it one thing at a time and sort of adapt and move along with them and be very aware of the changes that are taking place and work together to make sure that we're able to live up to the challenges and, really face them headstrong. Those are our challenges for us. And so that we can make the children, of course, stronger for the future. So thank you, panelists, so much for joining me today. And thank you, audience, for engaging with us. That is the end of our panel today. Thank you.